Good morning, everybody. We are back from the Mint 400 and we have a new project in the shop. My buddy Chris is getting his bike done finally. This bike is named Bobby, and Bobby here has been through a lot, seen a lot of miles, been doing a lot of races, a lot of riding, just heavily used. So it's getting a full-blown makeover. It's getting a Duramax 420. It's got a motorcycle tank that he painted up custom himself. Pretty cool. We got a couple of fenders that are painted. A seat that he upholstered himself as well. So we got some cool, black and blue colors going on here. We got a new rear tire, engine plate for the 420, and this one is getting a Makuni right off the bat. And I'll let you know what Makuni that is later. I'm not sure myself. So this is our pile of parts. We got to break this thing down and start getting it mocked up. The first thing we're going to do, I think, is we got to get that old engine out of there. That's number one. We'll get the old engine out. We'll clean things up. We'll take that apart because that's not going to fit in there with that gas tank or that muffler or that intake box or any of that stuff. So that's gonna have to get broken down. That's gonna have to come off there. We'll get it all mocked up and we'll see what we need to do. We're gonna have to get that engine plate put in there, but first we'll get that out of there and see if that's even gonna fit. It should. The next thing we have to do on this bike is we need to remove the governor. I've made this mistake before of just leaving it right here. You see it's got this, it's got a cotter pin of some sort that holds it in place so it doesn't drop down into the motor. But now it's just basically freewheeling in there, and it's just a good idea to remove it. Plus, we have to pull this cover off anyways because when we're putting a 30 series torque converter on here, and when you put the 30 series plate on here, it runs into this oil fill right here. So you got to shave this off. So we're gonna go ahead, while we're at it, we're gonna pull this cover off, we're gonna pull the governor out of it, we're gonna shave this off, put it all back together, and then it'll be ready to go in the bike. Oh, and while we're at it, we're also going to go ahead and pull the low oil pressure, or the low oil sensor, just because it causes more problems than anything. Okay, so the rest of these I believe are just 10s. Pop all these 10s off of here, and this cover should come right off. Okay, so there's our governor right there. I forgot these are different than in the small blocks. It would be shoved back in the case. So this is way easier. So we'll pull this cotter pin here. Let's see, we need to rotate the engine a little bit. Get that out of the way. There's our low oil pressure sensor. We got to pop that out too, and we're gonna get this out. But I think I need to push it back up, turn the crank, and I think it'll go down easier going that way. Okay, so that went back up in there. If we push this down here, maybe, there it goes. See, just fell out. I was trying to force it. So that's junk. We gotta get a bolt to put in there. First, we're gonna yank that. And go ahead and pull that low oil pressure sensor. We're gonna 8 millimeters. Here's the low oil pressure sensor. I think it's got like a little float in there. And then let's see if we can fish this guy out. Okay, so I'm gonna pull the balance shaft here. So I would like to line up some marks. There we go. Line up the 2 marks on the balance shaft and the crank. So that way I know it goes right back in the way I took it out. There's your low oil pressure. Just the wiring for it and that little doodad that goes through the case. And then we can go ahead and slip that back in there. Where is my mark? There it is. There you go. Balance shaft is in there. So the motor on my, it's controversial whether you need to run this or not. The motor on my golf cart does not have the balance shaft, and it does vibrate quite a bit. It doesn't seem to harm it at all, but it's definitely undesirable, the amount that it vibrates, for sure. We're gonna go ahead and leave the balance shaft in on this one. I mean, it probably doesn't rob too much horsepower. The reason it's out of my golf cart though is because we put a stroker crank in there, and and the balance shaft, there's no way to clearance the balance shaft to clear the stroker crank. So what's next? Oh yeah, so I need to plug these holes. I'm not sure what that is, but it looks like it fits in there perfectly. So let's see what happens if we run that in there. Oh yeah, that is perfect. All right, so I found a 5/16 18 bolt that threads, looks like it'll thread perfectly in there. So we're gonna go ahead, see how that works. Well, I think that'll work. We're gonna put some Loctite on this. Loctite. Okay. All right. So we got our 2 holes plugged, and now we have got to get our governor out of here. All right. So there's a pin right here. We're just gonna knock that out. That's gonna be the easiest way. Okay. And we got that. I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna go and cut this off right here. So we have this little pin, and I'm just gonna hammer that back in. So that way I don't have to plug it with anything else. All right, so we're just gonna go ahead and pound this back into that little hole, and then that will be plugged up. Yep, I'll do it. Okay, so the last thing that we got to do is, like I was telling you before, this whole thing has to be shaved off of here. Now what I've done in the past is you basically cut the head off of this guy and you make it so it can thread all the way down in there, and then you cut this off and that basically plugs the hole. But this time I think we're gonna go a step further. We're gonna cut this off and we're gonna weld it up. We're gonna seal it up so that it looks nicer and it's just a nicer job. No chance of leaking either. So we're gonna shave this guy off and somehow fill that big old hole. So we got our cover welded up. We're not gonna grind it down because I'm worried about, you know, porosity in the aluminum. When you weld on this like cast aluminum, it's kind of, there's usually a lot of porosity in it. So we got it sealed up real good there. And now we're gonna go ahead and put it back on. So now we have clearance, or we should have clearance for our torque converter to go on. Or at least the backing plate for the torque converter. Just like that. Okay. All right, so I've seen these come out before. So Loctite, and we're putting a lock washer on here. Yep. Okay, it's not going anywhere. Okay, so that's our torque converter on there. Let's test fit this motor onto the frame. We don't have our engine plate in there yet, but let's just throw it in there to make sure that it is gonna fit at all. Ooh, okay. Spark plug wire is causing us problems. Right? Oh, we got problems, all right. Let's see. I think it needs to be somewhere around there. So just barely squeeze this thing in here. But yeah, it definitely needs to come up off of that plate down there. So let's just do that. Let's throw that plate on there. Well, not so much. We gotta trim it down. But you get what I'm saying. Actually, has to go over this way, I think. It's gonna be somewhere in there like that. Let's see what it does like that. It might be a bit too, that's a little bit too high. But yeah, so once we get this down to there, but I gotta figure out where I'm gonna cut this plate before I just go slicing into it. I'm wondering if this is gonna interfere at all. Oh, he hasn't made any holes for this. There's 2 holes in the frame. I thought they were for this for sure. So this hasn't been mounted yet. Okay. Sits on there really nice, actually. Update here. I pulled all the cables and everything and the wiring off with the handlebars because it's just getting in the way at this point. So at one point these pegs broke off of this bike and got welded back on, and they are not exactly straight. So we're gonna go ahead and cut those off, and we're gonna redo those. But right now they're just kind of in the way of what we're trying to do. It looks like it's gonna work out. It's gonna be a little bit tricky, but we got a few things that are just kind of blocking right now. So like this, we need to cut this off. We got one here we need to cut off. We got one in here that we can cut off but that's after we take the wheel out. But for now, we need to get all these brackets cut off, and I need to grind this frame down so that we can actually weld on it. But this is pretty much where it's gonna sit, something like that. But I gotta get it all in here, and I gotta get the motor in, and I gotta get it all mocked up and make sure everything is perfectly straight. So straight and level. So that's what we're working on. We're gonna cut these brackets off, and we're gonna grind this thing down so that we got a clean surface to work off of. Okay, we got an update here. I was trying to do this in the least invasive way possible, and I realized I was just making things harder on myself. So we went ahead and we cut the whole engine plate out. If we weld the engine plate in where it needs to be, the engine plate's going to land perfectly on here, pretty much, or like on the edge of here. But then the bolt hole is going to be right above this. We're not going to be able to get a bolt in here. And we have this gap, we end up with a gap that we have to bridge somehow. So what we're going to do to remedy this situation is we are going to move this one tube. Now it's not going to change the geometry of the bike. We're still going to leave this tube connected and this tube connected. We're just going to slice this one up where it connects here. And on this side, we'll basically split them. We'll cut it down here and we'll move it over until it makes room for the engine plate to land perfectly where it needs to. And that's just going to be the best solution for this, fitting this monster engine in here. It's going to be tight, but that's going to be the best way to make it happen. So I'm going to go ahead and break this. We're going to take the forks off of this thing, and we're going to end up putting the frame up here on this table. It's going to make things a lot easier for me. Alright, so I'm hoping that this is enough to hold it on the table. I'm pretty 99% sure it is. I got two really good tacks on this tube over here on the table, and then I got one really good one here on this part of the frame, leaving this part, this tube here free so that we can slice it and move it like we talked about. Alright, so here we are. We've got first gusset in. I had some porosity in here, so I'm grinding this out, but I'm going to weld it when I lay it flat, so it'll make it easier and better chance of succeeding there. The rest of it turned out pretty good. Motor plate is in 100%. The next thing I want to work on is the foot pegs. And now that this frame is basically unequal, you know, we had to take this tube and shove it out this way. It's going to be unequal in where it lands on this tube. So I have to do some measuring, and I got to make sure that everything is totally square on this. And I want to make sure that the foot pegs are evenly spaced 100% from the center line of the bike. So I got to throw the engine back in here. Put that torque converter cover on there just to see how wide it is. That's basically the main side we got to worry about. You know, how wide do we have to be to clear that torque converter cover? And then we're going to match it on this side. foot pegs are on. We got the crossbar in here. We got to do a little bit of welding underneath, same with underneath this, but this thing is currently welded to the table, and we got to replace this other gusset on here. So now we need to completely clean this frame up, weld everything up, make sure it's good to go, and then I think we could paint it. I don't think there's anything else to do on this. So yeah, we're gonna get this frame finished, welded, we're gonna get it all cleaned up, we're gonna throw some fresh paint on it, and we'll move on from there. All right, so the last thing I gotta do before I paint this thing, I almost forgot, we wanna put this chain tensioner on here. So this is our chain tensioner here. It comes with a spring. This spring goes on here in some form or another, like this, and then that provides the action there. I've had this shock mounting bolt floating around for years and years, and it's just barely too big to fit through there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in the lathe, I'm gonna turn it down until it fits, and then we'll figure out some sort of a mounting tab, and we'll get this thing installed on this bike. All right, there's our piece. Slightly warm. Woo. All right, so here's what we got for our bracket here. I went and I put a little shoulder on this guy. That slips right into there. We're gonna go ahead and weld the back side of this so that we don't have any weld on the front interfering with the pivoting of the chain tensioner. So we're gonna go ahead and weld that up, and then we'll figure out how we're gonna mount this, or where we're gonna mount this on the swing arm. Now that we got that on there, let's figure out what we're gonna do with this spring. So far I like it this way. There it is. So all this is going to do is just provide that little bit of tension on the bottom of the sprocket. So as the chain comes around, or on the bottom of the chain rather, as the chain comes around, it's being pulled tight on this side. And then when it comes through here, it can get loose. And I think that's what happens when the chain comes off of these bikes, is the bottom gets loose and then it makes its way, you know, rattles a little bit here and then pulls itself off. Because this bike throws chains sometimes randomly and we never been able to figure out why. We don't know. There's nothing wrong with it. So that's what I'm thinking. So this is just going to provide that little bit of tension. Well, a pretty good amount of tension actually. It's going to provide tension there so that the chain doesn't, you know, rattle or do anything weird on the slack side. So that way you don't have to have the chain like totally just ramrodded tight, which isn't good for anything. So yeah. I think that's the last fab. I keep saying this to myself. Now it's time to finish cleaning this thing up, which I'm pretty close, and get some paint on it. And then we're gonna figure out something for a chain on this thing. Yep, that's done. All right, that's it for this one. On the next one, we are going to definitely be doing a lot more cosmetic stuff. We're going to get this thing looking pretty. We're going to get the Mikuni carb mounted on it, get the engine in there, all that stuff. This thing will be done and riding on the next episode. So smash that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell to be notified when new videos come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.